Honorable and esteemed Chief Guest, Shri Jatinder Singh Kamyotra, former Member Secretary, Central Pollution Control Board, New Delhi. Respected Chairperson, Dr. Elizabeth Verghese. Respected Director and CEO, Dr. Anand Jacob Verghese. Our Dynamic Director, Dr. Annie Jacob. Our beloved Principal, KCG College of Technology, Dr. Devasundari. Respected Principal, International School, Bharati Lakshmi, faculty members, and my dear students, a very good morning. I'm profoundly delighted to invite Ms. Bharati Lakshmi, Principal, Hindustan International School, to welcome our chief guest and the gathering.
Dr. Vandana, thank you so much for that. A very hearty and heartfelt good morning to our very esteemed chief guest, Shri Jatinder Singh Kamyotra. Sir, Sat Shri Akal, Vanakkam and Namaskar from all of us here at Chennai. We are truly honored to have you amidst here today to discuss on Delhi's air pollution saga, the past, present, and the future, on an important day as National Pollution Control Day. We are very delighted to have our school students also joining the college students on this day, because I think this entire generation needs to understand what the earth is facing at the moment and what is the way ahead. And unless we make our students realize the pertinence of it, we need to work together towards this very noble and necessary cause. So may I have the pleasure of welcoming you once again to this wonderful gathering and on a very wonderful day as this to discuss pertinent issues. On the same note, may I also have the pleasure of welcoming the Principal, KCG College of Technology, Dr. Devasundari, Dr. Vandana, HOD, Department of Civil Engineering, staff and dear students of KCG College of Technology and Hindustan International School. May we all listen to the expert and gain much as to how to save the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. The National Pollution Control Day is observed every year on this day in remembrance of those who lost their lives in the Bhopal gas tragedy when the deadly gas, methyl isocyanate, leaked out of the Union Carbide plant on December 2nd in the year 1984. The effects of that disaster are felt even now, I would say after more than 35 years. National Pollution Control Day is observed on December 2nd to instill awareness among people about environmental pollution and its disastrous consequences. It is very difficult to tackle and handle the situation of pollution when there is a very big effect of pollution on our environment. As you all know, pollution is caused due to many reasons like bursting of crackers, vehicles running on the roads, emissions from industries, and the list goes on. A pollution-free environment is very much essential for each one of us to perform all our tasks in a better way and more importantly, to remain disease-free. Our society should be aware of the pollution effects and its prevention to be taken for protecting our natural environment for the future generations. We at KCG College of Technology want our engineering graduates and Hindustan International School students to be aware of the impacts and the ill effects of pollution and perform their duties as good citizens. Hence this webinar. Today, we have Shri Jatinder Singh Kamyotra, the former Member Secretary, Central Pollution Control Board with us, to enlighten us with his vast knowledge and experience. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's my privilege to introduce our renowned speaker of the day to my dear students. Shri J.S. Kamyotra is our country's leading technical expert in the field of environment pollution control, and he is a real asset not only for CPCB or not only for India, but also for the entire South Asian region. Shri J.S. Kamyotra is an environmental expert and he is an alumnus of Delhi College of Engineering. He has been the member secretary of Central Pollution Control Board, the country's premier environment decision-making body, for almost 5 years. Shri Kamyatra ji has over 40 years of experience working in policy formulation, development of environmental standards, establishment of real-time monitoring networks in the areas of air quality, water, and noise pollution. He has also been responsible for the development of India's first indigenously developed mobile air quality monitoring van. Kamyatra ji has been a member of various national policy planning committees and various environmental committees constituted by the Honorable Supreme Court and the National Green Tribunal. He has a number of publications to his credit. Shri Kamyatra has been our country's representative in various international conferences and committees focusing on sustainable development in developing countries, particularly Asian and the SAARC region. He is a member of APCAP, the OECD Committee on Standards Development, and facilitator for Mail Declaration. He has traveled widely, both in India and abroad, coordinating various European and Canadian bilateral programs and projects to assess the mitigative technologies available that can be successfully imbibed in developing countries like ours. Shri Kamyatra ji was the member expert appraisal committee for Industry 1 sector constituted by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and member state level Environment Expert Assessment Authority Chandigarh, constituted under provision of EIA Notification 2006 as amended. It is amazing to learn his skills and commitment towards reaching a pollution-free South Asia. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invite to interact with our dear students. Now, let us begin our interaction with our beloved chief guest. Sir, seeking the unknown rather than talking about the knowns again and again has been the philosophy of our great nation. Treading or attempting to tread on this path, we wish to make this conversation a space to learn from your vast professional and administrative experience and seek your words of wisdom to build a young force to unburden our cities from the choking air pollution. Shall we begin our conversation with the tracking of historical background to the current air pollution status in Delhi, sir?
Good morning and thank you, Dr. Vandana. Thank you, Dr. Bharti, and the management and principals of KCG College and all the learned professors and dear students. First of all, I thank Dr. Vandana and his team for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. So today I'll not like to make a presentation basically. I just like to discuss that what are the issues, what are the challenges, or narrate a story basically that what has happened in Delhi for the last 25 years and what is the scenario as on date. And I leave to the students, dear students, and the learned professors to find the reason or the cause why success is far or why success is near. And then we can discuss on that also. Whenever we talk about pollution or any place, we say that this is air quality is bad. We always talk about the sources of pollution, basically. So sources vary from region to region, sources vary from place to place. But there are some other factors which influence the air quality. And the first of all, the most important one is the meteorology. If the meteorology is favorable, that means the wind speed is there, the dispersion takes place, accumulation does not take place, and the air quality remains normal. But in case there are inversion conditions, you all have studied in what are inversion. When inversion prevails, that means the earth gets cools and the upper layer remains warm. There's the inversion layer formed, and the mixing height is reduced. When the mixing height reduced, it's like a room. Reducing the size of a room, the air becomes compressed, and the pollutant concentration start increasing. So if that is a scenario, whether we can control meteorology or not, that's the question. The third part is the demography of the area. If the area is located in a seashore, you have the land breeze, you have the sea breeze. So cleaning takes place. But if it is the same in the valley, accumulation takes place. We can change slightly the demography of the area, but not a major. We cannot change the meteorology of the area, but we can talk about sources of pollution. We can control the pollution sources. And just take an example of Delhi. Delhi is a landlocked, which is influenced by winds in summer coming from the desert side and in winter coming from the northern side. When the winds blow from the desert side, they bring particulate matter, dust. The values are high, but it may not be high for PM 2.5 or PM 10 because it's the dust, it's the sand which is blowing. We may have higher concentration of PM levels. But when we talk about the winter, we have the burning, the local burning takes place, and all this burning takes place in the evening hours when temperature is down. Inversion conditions are prevailing. Ventilation is not available. Accumulation takes place. And we say the air quality is bad. If we look at that, now summer and winter, if you look at Delhi, we have two scenarios. In summer, the contribution is the particulate dust from the desert, whereas in winter, it is a contribution from the biomass or coal burning. People want to keep them warm. So the biomass burning contributes to the pollution in winter, whereas the dust from the deserts contributes to the pollution in summer. We have two different scenarios. Very well.
Can we have your quick response on how the other major cities in the Asian region are using their data for preparing their action plan?
If only you talk about our neighboring countries, except for, you can say for Bangladesh, there are hardly any station in many of the countries. And Bangladesh has initiated many actions now recently because their main problem is Dhaka, their capital, where they have like three-wheelers like our country. They have the adulterated fuel, they have the brick kilns, they have all these same problems what we used to have in the past. So they are trying to tackle those problems with the nearly same guidelines of philosophy, you can say, trying to control the vehicular pollution as a priority. And then trying to shift the brick kilns toward the gas base, which because of certain challenges, they have come back again to the coal base. After switching over again, they have come back to the coal. So they are working on developing a monitoring network to get adequate data so that they can formulate policies, and they are started emission inventory to find out what are the sources which are contributing to that so that action can be initiated. Whereas if you see in Karachi and Lahore or Rawalpindi, Pakistan, not much has been done. Colombo being a sea-based, coast-based city, it has no major problem because there are no major industries in that area, especially. When we talk about Kathmandu, it's a valley. And again, they have their own problems. So they have started long back electrical trams, electrical vehicles moving on the road. But still in winter, we have the same problem where the air quality is very bad. If you talk about Bhutan, Thimphu is clear, but still they have, because now industrialization is taking place. So they are facing the same challenge of industrial pollution occurring in those areas also, from the limestone mining, from the steel industry which are coming up in that area. So the challenges are nearly same. But some countries have been able to resolve this issue, like Bangkok, by their road network. A good road network has been established where they have been able to control. But it takes time because we have to see the any problem in totality. Like when we talk about 80s or 90s or 2000 even, in Delhi, example, I'm just taking a case study of Delhi. The vehicle population was 3.4 million in 2000. And today the vehicle population is 12 million. So we have taken number of measures, but this vibrant demography is also a cause of concern. Because the population has increased over that period. Now, unofficial records say it is more than 30 million. Well, as at that time, it was 16 million. The population has increased, but the road length has not increased proportionately. The vehicles have increased from 3.4 to 12 million. That means roughly 300 times. But the road length has increased just by a few thousand kilometers. So the road density of vehicles has increased in a big way. So are this a challenge? So we have to visualize that. So what is the challenge and how we need to address it?
Yes, sir.
So whenever we talk about addressing air quality, nowadays it is recognized an urgent priority because of the primary health effects or impacts or perspective, whatever you can say. So that means whatever studies we need to initiate or dialogue we need to initiate, it should be towards identifying the sources so that we can formulate a rational and effective pollution mitigation policy. That's very important.
Okay, sir.
So,
Yeah. So I'll come back to that question again. Anyway, that was a wonderful.
any question? Any question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, again, I am going to discuss about the geographical coordinates of Delhi. So we all know that it is naturally prone to be impacted by the pollution generating activities in neighboring states and even neighboring countries, as you said. Could you please give us an insight into this aspect for the benefit of our students?
I'll definitely give, but just let me complete and I'll answer your question. So when we talk about Delhi's problem, it always occurs in, it seems to occur in October, November, and December. It seems. Does it mean that all the time the air quality is good? No. But at the load is remaining same, but the pollution dispersion is not taking place because of the meteorological conditions, which is aggravating the problem. That is the one reason. And this problem is not of today or 2016 when vast publicity started because of the episode happening in 2016. This problem was there prior to that also. Prior to 2000 also. Such instances used to occur. In the evening when fog was there, visibility used to decrease. And I still remember that in 1972 or 73, there were 3 days in Delhi where no sun was visible. So the problem goes back in the history. So seeing this, the first action was initiated in 1996 in Delhi, when a white paper was framed for Delhi pollution control. So that talked about pollution in Delhi and what should be done. And at that time, since we had the old technology vehicles, anybody moving on the road will have his hand or face black after traveling on a scooter for a short distance, and the shirt will turn black. So the Supreme Court intervened in 1998 and talked about taking punitive measures to control pollution. So the first measure was to introduce CNG in there at that time. So CNG was introduced, and as a result, all the public vehicles were converted to, public transport was converted to CNG. So in 5 years, we had roughly around 10,000 vehicles converted to CNG. At the same time, we introduced Bharat Stage 2 norms. at that time. At the same time, we discarded all the 15 years, all the 12 years commercial vehicles. It brought a big change in the air quality, improved the air quality, particulate matter decreased, carbon monoxide decreased, and the things moved forward. And then we enforced the Bharat Stage 3 norms in 2005 in that. In between 2002, we introduced metro transport. That was the first step towards a clean fuel-based transport system. We introduced metro. That was in 2002. And it covered roughly 65 kilometers at that time. And if you look today, it is covering more than 400 to 500 kilometers of area now. So the next step, what was taken at that time, was to close all the major industries in Delhi. Around 500 major industries were closed in that time. And as a result, air quality looked better. But over this period of time, the vehicle population kept on increasing. And it increased to around 4.8 million by 2008. Again, the problem of PM10 increased now. It became 150. So it's through another challenge that what to be done now. So as a result, it was felt that new standards need to be formulated to incorporate PM2.5 as a measure of air quality. So we came out with National Ambient Air Quality Standard 2009, which had 12 parameters, had a uniformity of standard. The earliest standards, which were framed in 84 or modified in 89, talked about land use pattern. That means the residential area had a different standard, the industrial area had a different standard, the commercial area had a different standard, and the sensitive area had a different standard. But in 2009, it was felt that the air being dynamic, we need to have a uniform standard. And so uniform standard for the entire country was framed with 12 parameters, making them more stringent, discarding the particulate matter, which talked about PM micron size 100. So we introduced PM10 and PM2.5 as the new parameters. We introduced benzene, another parameter. We talked about arsenic, nickel, all these additional parameters, 12 parameters in total, to ensure that the air quality remains same. While this exercise was going on, in 1998, it was felt that the present mechanism of implementing all the pollution control measures was not taking a big leap before different departments were involved. There was no coordination. So this resulted in constitution of APCA, that is the Environment Pollution Prevention and Control Authority in 1998. So this was an authority which was made responsible for improving the air quality of Delhi as well as NCR region. While looking into that, that there is a coordination between the various departments which are functioning. So when the air quality started deteriorating in terms of PM10 in 2008, it was thought that the BS4, Bharat Stage 4 norm should be implemented on priority. So this resulted in implementation of Bharat Stage norms in 2010 in Delhi and some of the metropolitan cities. Whereas in the entire country, these were implemented by 2017. So this was our major step, another major step which had taken place. To formulate any rational action plan for abatement and control of pollution, there is a need or necessity to have a source apportionment studies conducted to find out what is the contribution of the various sources and what results in improving the air quality in case those sources are controlled, what is the economic impact of those control measures. So as a result, the first source apportionment study was initiated in 2007, and the report came in 2010-11, which talked about the sources which are contributing to the pollution, the percentage contribution, and the action plan required to mitigate the impact of those pollutants on the air quality. Subsequently, between 2010 and 2017, another 4 reports came on source apportionment, or you can say about this. But all the reports have some variance with each other. One was projecting resuspended dust as one source. Another was projecting industry as another source. So this indicates that, yes, there is some gap, either in the methodology of study or in the interpretation. And which one to implement now? Because if one talks about industry, and if you look that we have closed all the major industries in Delhi, so that means there is no industrial impact. If the other says resuspended solids, okay, but the third says the power plants, again the power plants were in the verge of closure. So any study, source apportionment study or modeling studies which need to be conducted, need to be done on a rational basis. And the methodology of conducting those studies is very important. These studies were conducted by renowned institutes of the country, like TERI, NIRI, IITs, and few people. But yes, they did their best, considering the resources available. But still, we need to look why there is a gap between the conclusion of the various studies. This is a point which need to be, in case we are able to have a uniform policy or uniform guidelines, we can have comparison of 2 studies for any 2 cities there. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to compare any 2 studies if different methodologies are adopted. In between, in 2014, AQI was launched, Air Quality Index, because prior to that, the air quality was reflected in terms of PM10 is this, PM 2.5 is this, ozone is this. So it was felt that the public need to be sensitized on the air quality with respect to their severity or of pollution. And if we give just a number, public is not able to assess what is the air quality. Now, when we talk about air quality, that means, or AQI, we categorize under 4 heads the air quality. That means it can be good, it can be moderate to poor, very poor, severe, or severe plus, that means emergency. And which most of the time nowadays we have the air quality in the emergency mode in Delhi. Now the question comes, can a single AQI be adequate for a city like Delhi, which having an area of 1400 square kilometers? That's a major question. What is the zone of impact of one monitoring station? Now, if we see, as a result, it resulted in enhancing the monitoring network of Delhi, and Delhi has more than around 60 air quality monitoring systems now, and we are getting AQI for that. And now this AQI for all the stations is varying. So once the AQI is varying, so it clearly justifies or that statement that one station is not adequate to represent the air quality of Delhi. Now the variance in all these stations in terms of AQI, what does it indicate? Because if we talk about transboundary movement of pollutant, it will same everywhere. It should be same in that zone, at least zone of impact. It should be localized pollution can be there. So that means we need to have an assessment of micro and macro pollutants which are impacting the air quality of that station. So that means any policy which need to be formulated should take into consideration both the things. That is the pollutants flowing from outside and the pollutant generated local. So twofold policy has to be there in case we need to improve the air quality. Otherwise, just saying that something is coming from outside is a vague question. In 2016, there was an air episode in Delhi. That was, I think, on October 2016. And when the PM level, PM10 level reached as high as 700, PM2.5 level as high as 750 microgram. The standard is 60. And it was, at that time, it was felt that, yeah, this is because of the inversion conditions, this is because of the localized pollution and this. But after some time, it was visible that a dust storm which has arisen in Afghanistan had added to the pollutant at then. And that was clearly visible when the data was analyzed of stations, because that plume coming from the storm was dividing the city in two. In one side, the air quality was bad, and the other side was slightly better than that. So now we can imagine that the air pollutants which are coming from far are also impacted. But what is their contribution? When we talk about contribution, what are the sources? There are the natural sources like the storms, thunderstorms, dust storms, all this. And then are the man-made sources, which are the power plants, high stacks of power plants. But all these major power plants or major emission sources like the cement sector, or for that matter, the refineries, petrochemicals, they have their norms fixed. The norms are fixed considering their technology available to control the pollutants. And when we are controlling the pollutants from the sources, the combustion sources especially, like through installation of electrostatic precipitator, installation of the baghouse, or a hybrid system having both the electrostatic precipitator or the baghouse, we are able to control the bigger particles, but the finer particles still are emitted in the air. Just take an example of a power plant which is emitting 400 tons of fly ash. If you are able to control 99%, that means still we are releasing roughly 40 tons. And if you are able to have 99.99% efficiency, at least 4 tons. And these are all finer particles, and which remain in the air for a long, long time and travel a long distance. And these are the particles which are likely to impact the transboundary movement of air pollutants, because they keep circulating over a long period of time. But it is not that the standards are not there. Every country has a standard based on the technology. And there are many conventions which prohibit certain toxic pollutants like mercury. We are talking about the ozone depleting substances. We are talking about the POPs. So the conventions are there to ban that. But at the same time, you need to have the technology to control, and the best available technology to control particulate matter, even 99.99. So you are having all the finer particles. And if you are having such a big area like India, where we produce around 340 million megawatts of energy, and out of which around 64% is the coal-based energy. And we have few belts like Singrauli, like the Korba, where we produce more than 20,000 megawatt of power at one place. And so you can imagine the accumulation of the pollutant in that area. And with a stack height of 250 to 275 meters, the dispersion will be at least 10 to 20 times of the thicker particles, and maybe a long distance for the finer particles which are emitted from them. And they may be traversing a long distance. So these are the challenges which are inherent with the technology, because we cannot assume of having zero pollution. That becomes a very costly unless we try to switch over to the fuel, cleaner fuel, like we have switched over to CNG. But CNG, after introduction of CNG, we have started having areas where NOx is in, because the temperature of burning of CNG is high as compared to petrol and diesel. So more thermal NOx, more NOx in the air environment, more NOx being an ozone precursor, more ozone in the environment. So simultaneously, after this, it was felt to launch the odd and even scheme in Delhi. So odd and even scheme was launched there. The odd number of vehicles were permitted to operate in a day and even number of vehicles on the next day during a certain period of the time from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It has its impact, but the impact was only during the period when the vehicles are operating. But if we take the average over the day, again the values are same. So this threw another challenge. Meanwhile, Delhi government also imposed that no coal burning industry will be permitted and all industry will need to convert to oil as fuel. So after this 2016 episode, a graded action plan was framed that with the intensity of air pollution, we should have an action plan which should be implemented in a right earnest. That if the air quality goes beyond this AQI, these are the actions which need to be implemented. If it goes beyond this, these are the actions. And in case of extreme or emergency situation, you need to close all the schools, you need to close all the industrial activity, you need to close all the construction activity. So this was implemented. So this is being implemented right now also. In between, a study indicated that the emissions from power plants, what you mentioned just now, the transboundary movement, from the power plants, 13 power plants located in 300 kilometer range of Delhi contribute around 35 microgram of PM 2.5 to the ambient air of Delhi. And this is not because the particulate matter is traveling. This is because the conversion of SO2 to sulfate, the NO2 to nitrates, the aerosol conversion, which ultimately is monitored as PM 2.5. So as a result, the emission norms for power plants were made stringent. The new power plants will have to have 30 milligrams per normal meter cube as the emissions. They have to control the SO2 emissions. They have to control the NOx emissions. So this, when you talk about the transboundary movement, you see this is the transboundary movement impact. 13 power plants located within a radius of 300 kilometers from Delhi had to. The standards are formed, but these need to be implemented by all the power plants in the country for the betterment of the environment in the country. At the same time, all the stone crusher activity in Delhi region was stopped. All the brick kilns operating on the traditional technology were asked to convert to zigzag. Because in the traditional, the emissions are roughly 1200 milligrams per normal meter cube, but in the zigzag, the emissions are 200 milligrams per normal meter. So it's a reduction of around 600 times. Whereas these are more energy efficient, they have the better brick production. But again, in 2018, when the air quality became bad, so it was clearly directed that these brick kilns, even after conversion to zigzag, will not operate during winter season. At the same time, to ensure that the trucks which do not cater to the demand of Delhi do not enter there. 2 express highways have been constructed where the vehicles are diverted, eastern and western peripherals. All the vehicles are diverted from that so that they don't come to Delhi. So all the traffic pollution load has reduced. Then a clean air action plan was also framed for Delhi in 2018. Then in 2019, the national government, central government came out with a national clean air program. That all the cities which are non-attainment cities, that the cities which are not meeting the ambient air quality norm for any of the pollutant continuously for a period of 3 years are termed as non-attainment cities. So these cities need to have an action plan for their mitigation of pollution, and they should reduce their pollution level by 25 to 30% of the pollutant level in 2017 by 2024. So now it's a big challenge. It is not 25% over 2017, but if you see, there is a cumulative addition also taking place in 2018, 19, 20, 24. So they have to reduce this 7 years plus 25% of this. It's a big number. So whether the action plan takes into account this synergistic effect or not, it needs to be looked at. And this is a major challenge because it will come really 100% of what was in 2007. Because the way the vehicle population is growing, definitely it will have the impact. So this, if you look now at so many actions have been taken place. But if we see now, when the COVID pandemic started and we had a natural lockdown in March, April, it indicated a clear improvement in the air quality. It indicated that, yes, from Jalandhar, you can see the Dholagiri mountains. Yeah, that picture was clearly visible in the newspaper. It indicated that how Ganges dolphins were there. But at the same time, it indicated that the baseline data, which we could never imagine, we are getting a baseline data because we cannot assume of a scenario where all the activities are stopped, except for the essential activities or ambulances or the distilleries or the power plants operating. Otherwise, all the industries are closed. So no solution or situation can be better to give a baseline data than that period. But it also indicated that at some places, the air quality was still not meeting the norms. It indicated that there were certain other pollutants which were showing a rise because ozone was not depleting, NOx was not there, VOCs were there. So this was a trend visible in the country. So now, if we see the 5 studies which were conducted on source apportionment, and they gave an action plan that if you implement this, the air quality will be meeting the norms prescribed. But the COVID situation does not indicate that at some place. So now, where are the gaps? Is the implementation lacking, or the coordination lacking, or the right policies were not framed, or right conclusions were not drawn? I leave this to the students and let have a question and solutions from them, because they are the future leaders of the country and they have to think that what needs to be done. I just put a proposed problem to them with what actions have been taken so far in the last 25 years and what need to be done as on date. And just to add one more, and recently the government has made commission on air quality for NCR region in 2021, which is looking after that. And then there have been a lot of instances when we are talking about the stubble burning, but there are various features. Now, even today, the air quality is bad in Delhi, but they say the stubble burning is contributing less than 2%. If that is the case, then when it is contributing 40%, again, the EQI is same. How it can be? What is the rationale? So I just pose certain questions as a layman, and I want to have my dear students responding to that because they are the leaders and they are the policy makers for the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Definitely, sir. And we truly understand what are there are so many challenges involved. Earlier, we didn't know all this. That's really a good thing. And I'm sure our students will be giving a lot of suggestions at the end of this session. And my question, next question will be, as all of us know, the climate change and air pollution are so close-knitted phenomena that one can never succeed in unstitching them. As the curtains of the Conference of Parties, COP26, are drawn down now, sir, what is your take on the outcome of COP, the Conference of Parties, in addressing air pollution in general and air pollution in a major city like Delhi?
If you talk about the COPs, and when we talk about the control of the greenhouse gases, is basically the responsibility of the developed countries, because they have been the culprit of polluting all this. And what they have left, we are being asked to clean. And if we see the per capita greenhouse gas or carbon consumption in India, it is very, very less. But still, India has agreed to have carbon neutrality by 2070. But it requires a lot of money, and the funding, it will be in trillions of dollars, which even the commitment is not forthcoming from the developed countries, which have been a culprit. But it's not that we are not working. We have already started working on that. And our industries are very pro in this, and they are themselves looking at energy conservation. And I just give you an example that in 2003, when we talked about energy conservation from the cement plants, nobody agreed. They say, no, it is costing 8 crores per megawatt to recover energy. But now the same power plants have installed 7-stage or 8-stage energy recovery systems, which are on the waste heat recovery boilers. And there are few steel industries which, except for the one unit, they are not using energy for any other unit. They are just recovering energy from one operation, using in another operation, and that's why they are running their entire plant. So steel industries, if they operate in a positive way, they are always carbon positive, not carbon negative. So we are already working, and the cement plants with the use of 30% of fly ash are conserving on resources. They are converting on energy. Then they are co-processing. We are using the waste, which we are generating from various processes, to recover the energy and to recover the ingredients. So this way, about a couple of years back, the cement sector could save 800 crores worth of fuel by just burning the waste and recovering the energy. So the number of initiatives have already been taken by the industry, which are pro-industry, which are benefiting the industry, because India has committed to reduce our carbon contribution by 30% by 2030, and which definitely will meet by the clean fuel already, which we are working in a big way, the solar and the wind power. And as an initiative in Delhi, the local government has given an initiative that people can install all this government institutions have to install the solar system in there, for which subsidy was given, and the big companies were even installing free of cost, and they were just charging you 2 rupees or 3 rupees per unit, as against the 7 rupees which is supplied by the local electricity board. So it is already being done, so to save energy. But you have one challenge, you have to look into that. When we talk about e-vehicles, or when we talk about this metro system, they all run on power and they all consume energy. So that means we are changing the location of the problem to another place. And those people which are not benefit are exposed to the pollutant. So unless we have to work big way towards the cleaner fuel, so that those people are also not impacted, while we are talking about cities like Delhi, Calcutta, Mumbai to be clean. So those people are also benefited from the measures that are taken.
Yeah. I have some more questions, but before that, the forum is open for queries by students right now. My dear students, if you got any clarifications or queries, you can please raise your hand. Yes, anybody?
Dr. Vandana, if okay, can we have our school students ask a few questions?
Yeah, we'll start with the international school students. Yeah.
We have Keshav asking a question. Keshav, can you come forward and ask sir your question, please?
Keshav.
Hello?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, I'm Roshni from KSG College of Technology, CSE department. Can you please explain the role of thermal inversion in Delhi's air pollution crisis, sir?
Can you repeat the question? It's not clear.
Yeah, can you explain the role of thermal inversion in Delhi's air pollution crisis?
Okay. So I'll not like to go into the theory because it will take long time. I'll just, in the layman language, I'll explain. During summer, when the temperature is 45, 46, the mixing height available, that means the height from the ground to the top is around 13 to 1500 meters. That means that is the height available up to which dispersion of the pollutants takes place. But when the winter comes and there is no, the atmosphere is stable, that means there is no mixing. Just take a simple example. When you put a pan of water on the stove, the water keeps on mixing and all the water is uniform temperature if you find after some time. But if you put a rod, you will find a temperature gradient. If you heat the water with a rod, you will find a temperature gradient. So that means the mixing is not taking place. It has become stable. So similarly, when the air becomes stable, no mixing takes place. And the issue comes that instead of the 1500 meter mixing height or 1.3 kilometer mixing height, the mixing height reduces to 100 meters or 150 meters in the night time during winter. That means the area available for mixing is just 150 meters. It is like putting 10 people in a hall like you are sitting, or putting 10 people in a room 10 by 10 feet square size, where the air will be, then you will feel suffocation after some time. It's the same thing which is happening. And when we talk about the stable atmosphere, that means there is no wind velocity. And you must have studied the dry adiabatic lapse rate, where the temperature, when we move up per kilometer, it cools by 9.8 degrees, it starts cooling. And we have the wet adiabatic lapse rate also. And then we have the environmental lapse rate also, which is the actual lapse rate which is happening. And if the dry lapse rate and the environmental lapse rate are not in consonance, that means inversion takes place. And is a subject of discussion for on a lecture. If sometimes it's there, I'm happy to discuss that also, because that governs all the plume heights from what are emissions emitted from the plumes. That governs the plume dispersion. And it's so very important when you talk about modeling. So how to do that? So in just in a layman, it's like inversion means 10 people sitting in a room by 10 by 10 square feet. And in another case, when no inversion is 10 people sitting in a 150 square feet area room. So you have less suffocation of air, less accumulation of the pollutant, and no ventilation. So this is in the layman what I can say, but theoretically it will take time to explain.
Thank you, sir. Next question can we have from our international school students? Keshav?
Yes, Dr. Vandan, I think we have Keshav coming up with a question.
Yes, Keshav.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes.
Was odd and even numbers worked in controlling air pollution, sir?
But just repeat it, ma'am.
Was odd and even numbers worked in controlling air pollution?
I'm not able to get the question.
By odd and even numbers, I mean the number plate
Yeah,
on
odd and
vehicles.
even number.
Yes, sir.
It was that the vehicle ended with the odd number. They were allowed to operate on one day, and the vehicles ending with the even numbers were allowed to operate on the second day. So both these two vehicles, that odd and even, are not allowed to operate on the same day, except in case they were operating on CNG. CNG vehicles were allowed to operate on all the days, whereas petrol and diesel vehicles are only allowed to operate on odd, like Monday odd vehicles, and Tuesday even vehicle, Wednesday odd vehicle, Thursday even vehicle. And just like to add, Delhi government has also imposed a tax on any vehicle with more than 2000 cc of engine has to pay an additional tax towards the pollution if they want to register in Delhi. So this is sort of to reduce the number of big vehicles, diesel vehicle coming into Delhi, which are the major source of pollution. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, Keshav, please unmute yourself.
Good noon, sir. This is Keshav Rajesh from grade 8. I'm studying HISK Karapakam. So my question is there a safe level of air pollution to protect our health?
Air pollution to provide?
So is there a safe level of air pollution to protect our health?
Keshav, put your mask down and ask Bache.
Last
Is there
word
a
is not
safe
clear.
level of air pollution to protect our health?
Health.
Health.
Yes, ma'am.
Is health related,
Yeah.
right? all these standards, whatever we discuss that we have come out with the National Ambient Air Quality Standard, these standards are all health-based standards. So when they are formulated, they consider the impact of health of these pollutants. They may be taking the impact individually, but it may be very difficult to find a synergistic impact of all the pollutants being together. So that's a major challenge still. But individual, yes, all these impacts are taken into account when we formulate it. And these are the acceptable impacts, because we cannot talk about the desired is zero pollution, which we cannot think at present, because the cost will be too exorbitant for that.
Yes, next question, please. Rohan?
Good morning,
Good noon,
sir.
sir.
Is
I'm Rohan
lockdown
Satish.
a solution for controlling the air pollution in New Delhi?
Can you repeat the first word?
Lockdown.
Is lockdown a solution for controlling the air pollution in New Delhi?
I could not get the first word again.
Is
Is
lockdown. Lockdown?
Lockdown.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Is lockdown a solution?
If you are sitting in a seat and you want to decide, what will you think? Whether a lockdown is a solution or the control is a solution?
I
Did you
think,
get-
but it cannot be for a longer period, right, sir? Maybe a temporary solution.
Do we need to look towards temporary solutions? That's my question. Do we need to always firefight, or we need to have a policy that yes, by next year or by 6 months, I will reduce the pollution by 10%. Next 10 years, 10 months, I will reduce by 50%. And maybe in next 3 years, I'll bring the air pollution within the norm.
Yes,
Should it be
sir.
that way, or should it be a stopgap arrangement always? Because I just told you a history of 25 years, what is happening and how much effort has gone and how much money has been spent.
Yes, sir.
Yes, temporary it can be, but it is not a solution. Because you have to see from the environmental point of view, yes, it is very good. But if you see from the point of view of the employment, like construction activity has been banned in Delhi. All the laborers are not having job. And this happened on Diwali period about a year back, prior to the COVID. And just 3 days prior to Diwali, all the construction activities were stopped. So the laborers have no work. So do we need a scenario where our fellow colleagues suffer that way? Or we need to have a long-term policy? It's a social problem. I'm keeping both separate, environment and social problem. But sitting at the helms of affair, if you are making a policy, we need to be considerate to our fellow citizens also, that yes, employment is a major thing, and how we provide the employment while talking about sustainable environmental development. We need to have both simultaneously, and good policy need to be framed for that.
Definitely, sir. Yes,
Yes, sir.
Rohan?
Yeah, please.
Good noon, sir. I'm Rohan Satish from Hindustan International School of Karapakam. I'd like to ask a question saying, is acid rain air pollution?
Presently, we don't have a problem of acid rain because our soil is alkaline. So that's a big advantage, except for some areas, maybe in Kerala, where otherwise everywhere there is alkaline soil and the problem of acid rain is very, very less. And even if that is there, it will be mostly restricted to areas like Korba or Chandrapur or Singrauli, where we burn a lot of coal. But we have an advantage that other countries have high sulfur in their coal, which varies from 0.9% to even more than 1%. And Indian coal has 0.4% sulfur. That's a very, very less if you see. But we have a disadvantage that our coal has very high ash content. It has more than 40% ash, where those coal have around 5 to 6% of the ash. So we have advantage in one sense, we have disadvantage in another sense. So the problem comes of storing of so much ash, how we store ash, how we use this ash. So But we are lucky that our cement plants are able to use 30 to 35% of the ash. And the last year, they consumed more than 70 million tons of ash. So 17 million tons of ash became cement without any raw material requirement, without any burning. It's just a grinding with the cement clinker. It's grinding and you become a cement. So it's advantage, it's disadvantage. We have number of issues. So you have benefits and impact both simultaneously. But we have to see the life cycle assessment, that how the life cycle behaves and what are the impact.
Yes, thank you, sir. Next question is from Anika. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Anika from grade 8. What effect does air pollution cause on food, crops, forest, and biodiversity?
You are talking about GRAP, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
So what's your question?
What effect does air pollution cause on food, crops, forest, and biodiversity?
Yes, good question. Yes, whenever the pollutants increase, it has impact on the biodiversity. And simple example, if we see the Ganges pollution, the dolphin has disappeared. And that's a big challenge, that how to get the dolphins back. And they are only visible in some parts of Patna region sometimes. And that's why the emphasis is on having a better air quality. And if you see, for two parameters especially, SO2 and NOx, we have, for all other parameters, the standards are uniform, only one standard. But for SO2 and NOx, we have two standards. One is for the sensitive area standard. So just to take care of the flora, fauna, the biodiversity, and whenever the environmental clearances, that is any big project is allowed to come, it has to get a complete assessment of the flora and fauna in that area. What are the mitigating measures they are taking to preserve those and ensure that no damage occurs to them? In case there is a forest, then they have to prepare a wildlife action plan, that how they will prevent the reptiles or any other species there. And they have to spend a lot of money on that. And due action is being taken, care is being taken, but yes, some impact may be there. And besides preparing the wildlife action plan, all these industries which are coming to reserve forests or areas where this biodiversity is there, they are asked to have a special green belt around 50 to 100 meters even, thick green belt, to prevent the pollutants from going there. Then they have to do the modeling studies to the zone of impact. If the zone of impact is coming, they may be required to shift their plume, the stack, so that the impact is not there. So while giving the environmental clearance, that means any permission to install any new project, all these factors are considered in depth at that time, and due action is taken to prevent them and preserve them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Questions? Any questions from KCG students? Okay. Yeah, Harshini from International School. Please go ahead. Harshini, can you hear me?
Yeah, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, proceed.
Yeah. Hi, sir. A very good afternoon. I'm from Hindustan International School, Karapakam. So can India, as a developing country, achieve net zero emissions by 2070, as said by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the Global Climate Summit?
Can you repeat last line?
Yeah. So can India, as a developing country, achieve net zero emissions by 2070, as said by our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the Global Climate Summit?
Yes.
Yeah. So how is it possible for India to it's a developing country, right? So how can India achieve net zero emission in a very short period of time?
India is a developing country, but it is also concerned about the environment. And that's why it was only our Prime Minister who made a commitment in the COPs. Voluntary commitment. You see, it was not a guided, it was a voluntary commitment. Yes, we will do it. And if you see an example, the renewable energy source, we have been nearly able to meet the target, what we fixed, of 20,000 gigawatts. We will be meeting that target. We are working on that. And because it is in the interest of the industries also simultaneously. And now there is some shift coming, because when we talk about the 5 trillion economy, we need to have the industries of a larger size. So those industries can afford new technologies which are carbon neutral, and it helps them in competing in the world market. You see, that's a major advantage, because if they produce so much material, they need to supply outside the country also. And once they're economically competitive, when they don't use any carbon material, coal or etc., and they try to recover in-house the energy. Just I gave an example. Many of the every steel industry is putting renewable energy now inside. It's not the renewable energy, but they are using the waste gas as energy. So they are trying to conserve energy as far as possible. And many of our industries have already set a target that they will be carbon neutral by 2050. Already, they are working in-house to have that target. And that they are also a major player in the CDM, carbon trading also. And they do audit every year to ensure that, yes, they are meeting that standard or not. So we can meet the target, but only limitation can be the finances, because it requires a lot of money. Like if we talk about the hydrogen as a fuel, so initial cost may be very high. When we talk about hydrogen production, it may be high. But once it's a mass production and the technology becomes cheap, yes, adaptation of those technology may be a major challenge. And that is where the students have to come forward, because you are all great technical people. You have to look at how the country can move forward with easy and cheap technology, which we can imbibe in our process. Small thing which you do, and then put them in, so that the country becomes self-reliant in the technology aspect. And that's an area where especially I like to look, because my focus has always been on Indianization, always. And students can do a lot, I know that. Because a simple example, if you see, the school children can reduce the cracker burning long time back in Delhi. If they have a will, they can achieve anything, and they have that. So I just want a pledge from all of you that, yes, you will work towards development of technologies. It may be a small one, but adding a drop and drop and drop will fill the ocean. And you have to work that. You don't think that it is a very small thing what I'm doing. No, just have big vision, big thought, and achieve something. So that's what my request to all my young colleagues will be, yes, I want that from you as a outcome of this deliberation.
Definitely, sir.
Yes.
Our students will definitely follow your advice, and definitely it will be taken care, sir. Yeah. Next question, Harsh. Any other questions? Kaya?
Yes. I'm Kaya Matthew of HISP, and my question is, as an individual, what is the best way to reduce air pollution?
Best source. Yeah, it's really a question which you have to answer on very, very small things which you can do to cut. And what you do, it adds to the bigger thing. Small things, you may be doing it, you may be practicing it. First of all, we always have geyser in our house where we put the thermostat on 60 degree, 50 degree temperature. We heat the water to 50 and 60, consuming energy. And then we mix it with cold water to bring it to acceptable temperature so that we can have, yes, enjoy a bath. Why? Why can't we heat the temperature to a range which is comfortable to us? Second, in our house, we use AC and which generally switch to 18 or 22 degrees and then have a blanket in the night. Is that required? If you have this set on 25 and 27 degrees, you save 20 to 25% of the energy. And for producing 1 megawatt of energy, you burn 300 kg of coal. And you generate roughly 120 kg of ash. Then you generate SO2, you generate greenhouse gas, you need the transport pollution. So you see the impact. Next thing, we all go to gym. And we go to gym on bike or scooty. Right? And we are going to do exercise. Why can't we go walking or we can't on cycle? Again in gym, we use the AC. Have we come to use the ambience of AC to improve our health, or we have come to improve our health? Sweat it out. You are not sweating out when you are working with the AC. Just think over these small things, because all the people of my age will remember in our houses, we used to go running to the park. We used to go walking to the market. And now everybody talks about the circular economy. And we had the circular economy at that time, that the big brother will buy something. And if it is not usable, it will go to the small one, the younger one. And then it will go to repair and then another will go. So that was the circular economy, and which now Europe talks that you have to repair, you have to refurbish, you have to reinvent, you have to recycle, you have to recover. Now they talk about these things which you are doing it. So if we go back to that, we will be saving a lot of energy, we will be saving a lot of resources, and that will help in improving the air quality. These are very small tips which you can and you maybe practice.
Yes, sir. Definitely, sir. Any more questions from students?
Ma'am, I think Harsh had a mic issue, so he's just seeking permission to ask if we have the time.
Oh, yes, please.
Harsh, are you ready, son?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
So, good afternoon, sir. The seminar was excellent. I would have one question. I'm from HISP, grade 11. My question is, how will the government take action on crackers as the large majority of its voter base is made up of highly religious groups?
Can you repeat? Can you speak clear the mic, please?
Yes. So my question is, how will the government take action on crackers as a large majority of its voter base is made up of highly religious people?
I'm not able to get the question. Ma'am, can you repeat it, ma'am?
Harsh, just go slow, bache. Go slow and be louder.
I have some problem with the voice coming from that side, actually.
He is wearing mask, I guess. 1 second.
No, he's not wearing a mask, doctor.
He's not wearing mask, actually.
No. Harsh, go ahead, slow and loud.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry
how
about
will
that,
the government take action on crackers? Yeah, no problem, sir. My question is, how will the government take action on crackers as a large majority of its voter base is made up of highly religious groups?
You want me to repeat it, sir? Shall I?
No. Can you repeat, ma'am?
Yeah. He's asking, how will the government take action on crackers as a large majority of its voter base is made up of highly religious groups? It's a political question.
So what is the aim when we celebrate any festival? What is the aim? Our aim is to enjoy, right? So if we try to compare it with the Lord Rama coming back to Ayodhya and Diwali being celebrated, it was only lights. There were no crackers. Crackers were added subsequently. So it was a festival of, that's why it is called Festival of Lights. It is not called the Festival of Crackers. So we can keep on adding anything, but still, that's why the Honorable Supreme Court permitted green crackers, but still it was found that many of the green crackers contain barium. which is a toxic component, and that's why they restricted it. And but lot of work was done in getting these green crackers also. Lot of work, but ultimately it did not. It could not be implemented. But maybe in future, yes, it can be, because our aim is not to create noise. Because when they use these crackers, they create noise of as impulsive noise as high as 130, 140 dB. And this impulsive noise, if somebody standing nearby, is very detrimental. Because I had suffered that impact, because we used to monitor on Diwali day. And CPCB never had a holiday on Diwali. I can just tell you, never. So when we're just standing at one place and somebody bursts that, and I still have sometimes impairment, sometimes still after so many years, the doctor said it will be recoverable, but I don't feel it. I think it has been recovered. It's still there. So these are not good from that angle. But yes, for our enjoyment, if you want to have, we can have the lighting crackers, which does not contain the toxic elements. And maybe this year we can have better green crackers, which does not contain the barium and all these toxic pollutants. But just look into that. Our aim is to, because how much the animals, the birds are impacted by this activity. Just see how they run when the crackers are fired. Just see. If you have sometimes seen that, then you will never do that. If this is just my suggestion, but yes, everybody wants to enjoy with the crackers, definitely, but it can be light crackers, which don't produce noise, which don't disturb the neighborhood, because the people suffering from health disorders and all this, they are likely to be impacted by this.
True, sir. True, sir. And it was a wonderful interaction among students as well as the renowned speaker. Sir, I have a couple of questions to ask you. Shall I?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. So we are producing science and engineering graduates and postgraduates in thousands every year across our country. As a tech administrator who has converted paper academic knowledge into field action, especially in pollution control, what is your advice to our students who are the future managers of our fragile planet?
Thanks, Dr. Vanna, for the question. My request to all my young colleagues is that they have to be practical oriented. They have to be being engineering students. That's the difference between the science and engineer. Engineer look with a wide vision. But when the science works, it talks about 30 as a number, and for them 30 is precise. But for engineers, no, there is a factor of safety also. Like you construct a building, you have a 2.5 times the factor of safety, which is not there in science. They talk about 30 means 30. So that's why just visualize what are the options available, visualize what can be done, and what is the best option available. Because when we start working, we find number of solutions. It's not that there's only one solution. And out of that, we have to identify the best solution. So best does not always mean it should be costly. Best is what can be implemented. You see, we should not bring something which is not implementable. We should bring something which is implementable. And even if it helps to reduce the pollution or help the society by 10%, 20%, it is very, very big. I just give one example, like in civil engineering, you talk about sewage treatment plants. Yes. And to design a good sewage treatment plant with tertiary treatment will cost you 3 to 4 crore rupees per million liters with all the accessories. So in India, the present gap of sewage treatment in the major cities or larger cities including is around 40 million liters, 40,000 million liters. So that means you need 1,20,000 million crores to 1,60,000 crores for construction of ETPs, STPs. Then we don't have sewerage system. We don't have the pumping system. So that means another 1 lakh to 2 lakhs crore rupees for that. Can we afford to dig all the cities simultaneously? No. So what is the way out now? Can we put some sort of mechanism to treat water in the drains itself, like phytoremediation, microremediation, And even if we are able to reduce the load by 40%, 50%, it's a big achievement. Because by the time we are able to develop the STP, the problem will far aggravate and it will be 10 years time. So let's work on this small solution. Improve this, bring them in a scientific way so that we improve the results from 50 to 70%. And then 30% can be taken care by the carrying capacity of the river or the carrying capacity of the environment. So just think over small things, what we can do. And all engineers, I say for that matter, they can do. Because if I can think when we did not have the technology and all this, I'm a civil engineer, but I work in instrumentation. And being in CPCB, you have to know about hydraulics, you have to know about chemical engineering, you have to know about microbiology, you have to know about electronics, electrical, everything. So if an old person like me can do it, why young students cannot do it? They have more energy, they can do it. Just a request, look into the issues, look into the challenges, come out with a viable solution. You may feel that, yeah, it is a very small one. No. All small bits add to a solution, bigger solution. Let's work that. And there is a large scope when we talk about carbon neutrality. There is a large scope when we talk about instrumentation. We don't have instrumentation even to monitor. And all these are coming from outside. Why can't we develop our own instruments, which are rigid, rugged, which give you reliable and precise data, as equivalent to the system which costs crores of rupees and comes from Europe? Why? Why can't we develop our own system? They can be sensor-based, or they can be even the biosensor-based. And we should look towards a natural solution. Like when we talk about the seashore erosion, we talk about mangroves. We plant the mangroves which grow there and they stop the erosion. They stop the flooding. Why can't we look towards a natural solution? And being a civil engineer or being electrical engineer, we can work as a team, come out with good sensor-based system and develop the technology. And there's a lot to be done and lot can be achieved. Just a suggestion from my side.
Certainly, sir. Very motivating and inspirational. Sir, as we have come to the closure of this wonderful session, I have a final question to ask.
Yes.
Being a celebrated ambassador of science, engineering, and management, could you please share your views on technology-driven education and solution-oriented education in the context of pollution control initiatives in India?
Can you repeat, Doctor, your question?
Yes, sir. Could you please share your views on technology-driven education and solution-oriented education in the context of pollution control initiatives in our country?
Yeah, it's a very important question. Because presently, whatever we look towards, either we look towards the European countries or we look towards the US. When we talk about standards, we look towards them. If we don't have standards, we look towards factors from them, which may not be relevant for our country. So our education has to be, especially in the field of environment, it has to be both technology driven and solution oriented simultaneously. When I say technology driven, we need to find a right mix of the technology that can be used. Just take a simple example that when we talk about any sewage treatment plant, we always talk about primary treatment. Or when we talk about ETP, we always talk about primary treatment, whether it is required or not. But we have always in the system.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, we should see whether we need it or not, because we are consuming power. We are spending on the area, land, then we are on the construction and the OpEx. All things we are spending. Do we need it? If we don't need it, we can take it out from the circuit. Second thing is, we are working with activated sludge process. Many of the technologies work on the activated or aerobic system. And the book says that the oxygen level should be maintained between 2 and 3. But in our country, the temperature is high. Even if a DO level is maintained of 1 or 1.2, it suffices. That is a practical experience. So why we need 2.5? That means we need half the energy what we need to produce that. So these technology-driven solutions need to be incorporated by exposure and experience. That means the field visit need to be a major part of the education. Working in the field on such treatment plants or pollution control system or the process system should be a part of your curriculum, so that they learn from the actual implementation rather than looking in the books, because from the books we don't get clarity that what is happening and how it is happening. And this is just a suggestion that yes, if we can work on this, then the mindset will change. Then they will always work on solution-oriented approach, because they have seen actually what is happening in them, and it will help them. A simple example now, you see, in all our households we have water pumps to pump the water, booster pumps. So that means at the same time, all the motors are started. The peak load increases. The load on the power plant increases simultaneously, right? That means the pumping which is done is not adequate that the water reaches second or third floor, which should be the criteria. So it means that either the pumping system is not designed for that, or adequate head is not available, or the pipelines are not able to take the load of that pressure. But are these pipelines able to take the load of all the machine motors sucking water simultaneously? And that is the reason we get contaminated by the sewage. And then all this water is thrown. When the water comes, everybody throws the old water which is stored. Oh, fresh water has come. Let's store that. Then people are always anxious that when water will come. So they keep on waiting 5:30. Yes. So why we should have that? Why can't we develop a system that yes, when the water comes, it reaches the second, third floor. There is an automatic system of locking that yes, it should be mandatory, or it should be controlled by IT, that your mobile can control it to start the motor. It gets a signal that water has come and it can start. So our students can develop that. These are the technology-based solutions which can work. And when any overflow is there, even in the neighborhood, there should be a sensor that yes, somebody gets an alarm and informs the resident that yes, this is happening, water is being wasted. So we can work on small things and save a lot of energy, save a lot of water footprint. We can do that, but we have to work on that.
Sir, our students have already started working on this kind of projects using Internet of Things. It's going on. Let us see, sir.
So it's very good to hear that. But this is just a suggestion. Then there are many such areas where we can work, where students can work. Even like garbage collection from your college, that in case anybody puts the wrong garbage in the wrong bin, it gives a signal immediately and he has to take it out.
Great idea. Good. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, we can work on small things. Yeah, so segregation is done. We are meeting their compliance and it helps in further treatment also.
Certainly, sir.
Then in your canteen, you can have something that if somebody is wasting food, why? He should be penalized for that. Yes. Because people don't get food to eat and somebody is wasting food. He can take in second time if he wants, but why to waste? So some sort of criteria can be fixed that how much waste was generated today in the canteen. And if that is not reducing over a period of time, then increase the price. Let the people suffer. Oh, yes.
Definitely. We'll work on those kind of projects.
Or you can have some other incentive that somebody is not wasting, they get incentive.
Sounds great. Yes, sir. That works well, I guess. Yeah. Okay, sir. Okay, fine. Thank you so much, sir. And we have just one more thing to be done for today's session. In order to create awareness among our students about National Pollution Control Day, we have also conducted digital poster design contest and short film contest for our first year as well as school students on the theme Environmental Conservation and Climate Change. Today, we are also going to release a short film made by our final year civil engineering students related to awareness on pollution. Shall we watch this short film right now?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Here we go. Just a second. Sharing my screen. Screen is visible. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it's visible.
It's journey towards environmental awareness.
டேய் டெஸ்ட் பண்ணுறதுக்கு ஒரு இடமே கிடைக்கலையா?
என்ன பிரதாப், லேப் மலையில் முழுகிடுச்சு.
அப்போவே சொன்ன வேலை சேரில் கட்டாதன்னு கேட்டியா நீ? மிஸ்டர் பகத், இந்த குழிக்குள்ளே நான் தான் விழுந்தாகணுமா?
உங்கள் கூட பழகின பாவத்துக்கு நீங்கள் போய் தான் ஆகணும் பிரதாப்.
டேய் திருப்பி கேட்குறேன், போய் ஆகணுமாடா?
இந்த அப்படி நீ தான் போய் ஆகணும். காரில் மாட்டிக்க. இது ஸ்டார்ட் பேக்.
அம்மா சீனிகா, இங்கே என்ன ஆச்சுன்னு சொல்ல முடியுமா?
ஹாய் பாஸ், இங்கே என்ன நடந்துச்சுன்னு தெரியல, ஆனால் மாஸ்க் போட்டுக்கிறது நல்லது.
உனக்கே தெரியலையா?
ஆமாம் பாஸ்.
சரி, அங்கே ஒருத்தர் வர நம்ம கேட்போம். பிரதர் பிரதர் இங்கே வாங்கலேன். ஆமாம், இந்த வருஷம் மாஸ்க் போட்டுங்க, கோவிட் ஒன்றும் போகலையா? ஏன் என்ன லுக்கு சொல்ல முடியாதுன்னா போ. தண்ணி தங்கிக்குது, எங்கே கிடைக்குதுன்னு பார்ப்போம்.
Hey dude.
Hey you, தோ வரேன்.
Hey dude, welcome.
கொஞ்சம் குடிக்க தண்ணி தானே.
இந்த கேட்ச்.
நான் இது கேட்கல, தண்ணி கேட்டேன். இது குடிச்சுக்கோ.
இங்கே ஒரு பாட்டிலோட விலை 1000 ரூபா. அதான் யாரும் தண்ணி வாங்குறது இல்லை.
என்னது ஒரு வாட்டர் பாட்டில் 1000 ரூபா? 1 லிட்டரா? என்ன சிரிப்பா இருக்கு? சரி ஆமாம், இங்கே எதுக்கு எல்லாரும் ஒன்றா அவ்வளோ மாஸ்க் போட்டுட்ருக்காங்க?
இங்கே எல்லாமே ஏர் பொல்யூஷன் ஆயிடுச்சு.
ஓ,
கோவிட்லாம் வந்து எப்போயோ போயிடுச்சு. அதனால தான் இங்கே எல்லாம் மாஸ்க் போட்டுட்ருக்காங்க.
இவ்வளோ ஏர் பொல்யூஷன் இருக்கா? அப்போ ஆக்சிஜன் என்ன தர்ற? என்னது இது?
இது ஆக்சிஜன் சிலிண்டர். இதை வச்சு நாங்கள் ப்ரீத் பண்ணிகிட்ருக்கோம்.
இதில் தான் ப்ரீத் பண்ணுறீங்களா?
ஆமாம், அதை ரீஃபில் பண்ணிக்க, உனக்கு யூஸ் ஆகும். அது மட்டும் இல்லை, லேண்ட் எல்லாம் பொல்யூட் ஆகிடுச்சு.
ஐயோ,
அதனால் இங்கே ஒன்றும் பெருசாக மரம்லாம் எதுவும் கிடையாது இங்கே.
ஓஹோ, ஃப்யூச்சரில் பொல்யூஷன் தான் ப்ராப்ளமா?
ஆமாம், வாட்டர் பொல்யூஷனால தான் இப்போ இங்கே உனக்கு தண்ணி கூட கிடைக்கல குடிக்க. அது மட்டும் இல்லை, உங்கள் காலத்தில் மழை பெஞ்சா வேளச்சேரி முழுகும். இப்போ இங்கே எங்களுக்கு வேளச்சேரி தான் பீச்சு. ஓ காட், போயிட்டான். எப்படியோ நம்ம மிஷன் சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல் ஆயிடுச்சு.
நம்மலாம் கொரோனா தான் ரொம்ப மோசமான வைரஸ் நினச்சிட்டு இருக்கோம். ஆனால் ஃப்யூச்சர் இதோட பெருசாக இருக்குது.
என்ன?
பொல்யூஷன்.
Good job, guys. So hope you liked it, and we also had subtitles.
It was a good, good concept and good message. Thanks for that. It's really.
So much, guys. I think it's like more than 1.5 hours. Over to Dr. Lakshmipathy, sir, for vote of thanks. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So it was a really wonderful session. So it gives me a great pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for this enthralling session and more interactive session. I should say that. So firstly, we would like to thank the management and our principal, Dr. P. Devasundari, for the support and guidance not to organize this session in view of the National Pollution Control Day, which we haven't actually discussed about. So today we are actually having our National Pollution Control Day. So it was a great session, in fact. And secondly, I would like to thank Dr. Vandana Devi, HOD Civil Engineering, for arranging the resource person. And thirdly, we would like to thank the resource person of the day, Shri Jitendra Singh, Director CPCB New Delhi, for really accepting our invite and keeping us more interactive on understanding about how the air pollution is creating a biggest problem in our country and how to deal with it from the scratch. Okay. And lastly, I would like to thank the participants of the session, and a special thanks goes to the Hindustan International School students as well. Thank you all.
So thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful interactive session. Thank you so much.
Can I just add?
Yes, sir. Please. Yes, sir.
So first of all, it's my pleasure that you gave me an opportunity to be here. And I thank all Dr. Vandana, you, your team, and all the management of the engineering college and the dear students for their questions. Maybe some of their questions may not have been answered in what they wanted. Like the crackers, it's a political question, but I don't want to enter politics with the environment. So I just restrict it to the environment only. Yeah. So, but we have to look in still in the wider perspective of the environment and not on the small perspective of the religion, because none of the religion talks about damage to the environment. If you look into Christianity, it always talks about better environment. If you look into the Hindu religion, it takes Ganga as mother. So water is treated as mother. In Muslims, water is very pure and they are not allowed to pollute it. And similarly, in our religion, this already says that Mother Earth is our mother, and the wind is the guru because it carries the message is through sound to everybody. And water. So we have to be very careful that yes, all the religions preach same thing, but it is what we induce or we interpret. So interpretation should be to the best of the environment, to the best of the mankind and humanity, and not a small interpretation, because none of the religion talks about harm to any other religion, talks about disrespect to any other religion, because what is there? All are one. Just like Guru Nanak says, Awwal Allah Nur Upaya, that God, Allah, and we come from that same source. It will be the same. And we always go back to the same source. So why there is a difference between them, people, is what we make. It's not what God makes, but what we make. Because what is dharam? Dharam is what we take. Dharmasya so dharni. Whatever religion we take, we become a Hindu, we become Muslim, we become a Christian. It's not by birth. When we Is born as a human being. He's not born as a Hindu, as a Muslim, or a Christian, or a Sikh, or a Jain. So just treat all the religions with passion, with same thing, and never bring religion in between the benefit of mankind, humanity, environment, any interest. Just a suggestion from my side.
Very touching, sir. Very touching. Thank you so much. Thank you, one and all. Jai Hind. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.